The man walked through the golden gates of the palace, his arms holding something wrapped tightly in a white blanket. His boots echoed in the vast, silent hall. All eyes were on him, guards, servants, nobles in high balconies. They stared not at the man, but at what he carried. His name was Kale. A traveler, a soldier once, now just a wanderer with a purpose. He had crossed dead lands, cities ruined by war, and starships torn by storms. He had fought beasts, escaped bandits, and survived poison winds. All for this. For the child he now brought back, the Queen's child. Or so he believed. Kale stopped at the foot of the throne steps. The Queen sat high above, her face calm but cold. Her armor gleamed like it was made of suns. Her eyes glowed red, not angry but deep like fire behind ice. Her skin was blue as the night sky on a clear world. She was not human. She was taller, sharper, and far more powerful. She was Queen Oravel of the Zir Dominion. 2 guards stepped forward. One took the child from Kale, who let go slowly. His hands lingered a moment on the soft bundle. The guard moved up the stairs and presented the child to the Queen with a bow. Kale lowered his head. "As you commanded, Your Majesty. I found him. Hidden on a merchant ship, drugged. He is safe now." Silence. The Queen stood. Her long black hair fell like shadows over her armor. She looked down at the child, then unwrapped a corner of the cloth. She froze. Her lips pulled back just slightly. The hall seemed to grow colder. Kale looked up, confused. "My queen?" "He is unharmed," Oravel's voice cut through the air, sharp as metal. "This is not my son." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Kale's heart skipped. "What?" The Queen descended the stairs. Her movements were slow, controlled. Every step echoed power. She stopped before Kale. The child rested in her arms, still asleep. She leaned close, her glowing eyes locked on his. "This is foreign blood," she whispered. "Stolen, yes. But not mine." Kale took a step back. "I don't understand." He was guarded. "The name on the records. They lied to you," she said. "Or you lied to me." Kyle's throat tightened. "I swear I didn't. I saw the mark on his wrist. The same symbol carved on your banners." The Queen turned slightly and showed him the child's wrist. The mark was there, yes, but it was burned into the skin, fresh, fake. Kale's knees felt weak. "No, I was tricked. I was told, you brought me the wrong child," she said. Her voice held no anger, only judgment. Behind her, the guards moved closer. Kyle raised his hands. "Wait, I didn't know. I risked my life. You risked a stranger's life, and brought him here." The Queen looked down at the baby again. "He is innocent, but he is not mine." One of the nobles stepped forward. "Shall we punish him, Majesty?" Kale stood still, breath caught in his throat. This was not the reward he expected. This was not the ending he had imagined when he saw himself returning the lost prince. He was a fool, used and now possibly condemned. But Oravel didn't speak. She looked at the child for a long moment, then back at Kale. "Perhaps you were misled," she said at last. "But if you truly seek the truth, you will find where my real son is, and this time do not fail." Kale nodded slowly. His legs still shook, but a fire had started in his chest. He had come here to finish a task. Now a new one had begun. The Queen turned her back to him. "Take the child to the healers, and bring this man a map." Kale knew this wasn't over. It had only just begun. Kyle stood just outside the palace gates, the weight of the Queen's words still heavy on his shoulders. In his hand was a rolled-up map, sealed with golden ink, marked with star routes, ancient symbols, and strange red warnings he couldn't read. It wasn't just a guide. It was a test. Behind him, the city of Calith burned bright under alien moons. The people walked with straight backs and guarded hearts. None smiled. Everyone whispered of the Queen's stolen son, of Kale's failure, of the human who dared bring false blood into the throne hall. He didn't look back. He stepped onto the ramp of the transport craft waiting for him. A soldier in silver armor nodded once and closed the hatch behind him. Inside, the lights dimmed. Kale dropped into the hard seat, his hands still stained from the journey that led to nothing. A soft voice came from the seat beside him. "You're lucky she didn't have you killed." Kale turned. A female figure sat next to him. She wasn't Zir like the Queen, but her skin shimmered like water under sunlight, pale blue eyes. Black braids hung over her shoulders. She wore scout armor and a blade rested on her hip. "Who are you?" Kale asked. "I'm Lyra. The Queen sent me to make sure you don't die before finding the real child." Kale narrowed his eyes. Babysitter? Tracker, she said. And if you run, I cut your legs off. Nothing personal, he didn't laugh. He was too tired for it. Do you believe I was tricked? Lyra tilted her head. No, I think you were stupid. But not a traitor. If you were, you'd be ash now. The ship rumbled as it rose through the sky, breaking past the clouds. Kyle unrolled the map. Lyra leaned over his shoulder, pointing to a spot near the outer edge. That's where we go first. A black market moon called Driva's Ring. The Queen's son was taken by a smuggler named Heir. He vanished into that place weeks ago. Why would he go there? Kale asked. Lyra gave him a long look. You think a child wants to be taken? You think he had a choice? Kale closed his mouth. He looked at the mark again on the map. Driva's Ring. A lawless zone filled with broken satellites, abandoned mines, and people who only believed in two things. Money and escape. I'll find him, Kyle said quietly. Lyra didn't answer, but her hand rested briefly on the hilt of her blade. Just a reminder, the trip to Driva's Ring took 2 days. The stars stretched like rivers outside the viewport. Kyle barely slept. He kept seeing the Queen's eyes, the way she had looked at the child with a mix of sorrow and fury. Not rage toward the baby, but toward whoever had taken her blood. On the 3rd day, the ship docked with a rattling hiss. The ring station was old, twisted, half falling apart. Lights flickered. The air smelled of chemicals and rust. People stared when they saw Kale and Lyra step out, one human and one warrior. Lyra moved fast. She spoke to traders, scanned faces, showed symbols. Kale followed, quiet. He watched. He noticed fear in some eyes. Not fear of Lyra, but fear of something else. He leaned in close to one merchant. What happened here a week ago? The man's hands shook. A smuggler came, said he had royal blood, said he'd sell him to the highest bidder. Then, he vanished. His ship exploded. Anyone survive? Kale asked. The merchant's voice dropped to a whisper. They say a child did, but he wasn't alone. Something else protected him. Kale frowned. What something? No one knows. Only thing they found was a broken spear, still glowing. Kale and Lyra exchanged a look. The map burned hotter in his hand now. Something had survived. Something old. Something guarding the child, and it was waiting. Kale stared at the broken spear on the merchant's table. It wasn't large, but it pulsed with faint blue light. The metal didn't seem native to this part of the galaxy. There were old runes carved deep into its surface. Some were glowing. Others flickered like they were wounded. Lyra picked it up carefully. This isn't Ziramake. It's older. Much older. Kale looked around. The other traders had backed away, afraid to even be near it. You said this was found near the explosion? The merchant nodded. Floating in space. The child was inside a broken escape pod. The spear was next to him. No one saw who put him there. Kyle clenched his jaw. Someone saved him. Lyra ran her fingers over the runes. Or something. They took the spear and followed the trail further into the ring. Driva's Ring was like a maze. Metal walkways, rusted cargo bays, flickering lights. It had no law, only rules written in fear. Anyone could vanish here. Most did. They found a message left behind on a wall, scorched in laser-etched writing. He is not theirs. He is chosen. Kale ran his hand across the black marks. Who wrote this? Lyra was already scanning the area. I think we're not alone here. Someone is watching us. From the shadows, a figure appeared. Tall, thin, wrapped in a gray cloak made from old armor plates and dust-covered rags. His eyes glowed dim gold beneath a deep hood. He said nothing, just tilted his head at the spear. Kale raised it slightly. Do you know what this is? The figure stepped closer. His voice was like dry leaves. You carry the Protector's weapon. It should not be yours, Kale tensed. Lyra put her hand on her blade. We're looking for a child. He was taken from the Queen. The figure's mouth curled. The Queen who once ruled by force and fire? The Queen who lost what was never hers? Kale stepped forward. Where is the boy? The figure didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted a hand and tapped the side of his hood. A small image appeared projected in the air. A child, green skin, glowing eyes, floating inside a pod protected by energy walls, safe, asleep. Kale's heart jumped. That's him. Lyra leaned closer. Where is this pod now? The figure looked at the broken spear in Kale's hand. He's with the one who truly claimed him. Not by blood, but by power. Kale frowned. What does that mean? The figure turned away. He is beyond the reach of kings and smugglers now. You seek a child, but what you will find is a weapon reborn. The light from the image faded. The figure began to walk into the dark corridor. Lyra followed without hesitation. Kale looked once more at the spear. It pulsed stronger now, like it felt something ahead. He followed. They moved through the forgotten sectors of the ring, past abandoned labs and sealed doors with warnings in dead languages. The figure led them silently. At last they reached a gate covered in vines and light moss. The air was warm here, quiet, still. The figure stopped. He is in there. But not alone. Lyra narrowed her eyes. Who else? The figure stepped back into the dark. Something older than the queen. Something that remembers the first war. Something waiting to be chosen again. Kale looked at Lyra. Are we ready for this? She looked at him and then at the spear. Doesn't matter. We go in. Together they stepped through the gate. Inside, the glow from the spear lit the way, and in the center of the chamber, something moved. The chamber was unlike anything Kale had seen before. It was not made of metal or stone, but of some smooth, glowing material that pulsed gently like a living heart. The walls curved high above them, covered in symbols that lit up as they passed. The air smelled clean, untouched by dust or rust. And at the very center was a floating cradle of light. Inside it, the child slept. Kyle stepped closer. His heart pounded. It was the same child, the same one who had been wrongly brought to the queen. But here, in this place, he looked different. His skin glowed faintly. His eyes, even closed, flickered with energy. He's changing, Kale whispered. Lyra circled slowly around the cradle. He's not just surviving. He's being transformed. The spear in Kale's hand suddenly burned hot. He dropped it with a hiss and it hit the ground with a loud clang. But instead of falling still, it began to float, slowly rising, spinning. Glowing brighter and brighter. The runes along its shaft lit up fully, and from the glowing walls, lines of light reached out and connected to it. The entire room trembled like it was waking from sleep. Kyle backed up. What is this place? A voice echoed from the walls. Not from a speaker. Not from the figure. It was old. Deep. And it spoke in their language. This is the vault of the first chosen. The blood has returned. The protector has returned. The cycle begins again. Kale's eyes widened. Protector? The cradle lowered gently to the ground. The baby stirred, opened its eyes, and stared directly at Kyle. For a moment, Kyle couldn't breathe. The child's gaze wasn't confused or afraid. It was calm, powerful. Lyra knelt down beside the cradle, slowly. He knows us somehow, the voice returned. The child is not of one blood. He is of many. Forged, not born. Carried through fire. Saved from the queen's chains. Kyle turned to Lyra. They created him? Here? No, she said quietly. They rescued him. Suddenly, alarms blared in the distance. Not from the chamber, but from outside. The station. Someone was here. Lyra stood quickly. We've been followed. The door behind them slammed shut. From the center of the floor, a new opening appeared. A spiral platform began to rise. The voice spoke again. Take the child. Take the protector's spear. Go. You are not ready for the full truth. Kyle reached for the child, but hesitated. Where do we go? To the stars. To the queen, and then to the enemy who waits in the dark. Lyra scooped up the child gently. The moment her hands touched him, the spear flew back into Kale's grip on its own, now glowing steady and warm. He held it tightly. It no longer felt like a weapon. It felt like a promise. The floor shifted and opened below them, revealing a narrow transport tunnel. Lights flickered to life along the sides. A pod waited below, an escape route. Fast and silent, Kale and Lyra climbed in. The child lay quietly in Lyra's arms, blinking slowly. As the pod shot forward, leaving the vault behind, Kale finally spoke. We have to return to the queen. Lyra nodded. And tell her she was wrong. Kale looked down at the spear. No. Tell her we were all wrong. Behind them, the vault sealed shut again. But the message had been delivered. The protector had returned, and far above them, in the queen's golden palace, something ancient stirred. The journey back to the queen's world was silent. Kale sat across from Lyra, the glowing spear resting across his knees. The child slept in Lyra's arms, his small hands glowing faintly. No one spoke. The stars outside moved fast, but time felt slow. Kyle kept thinking about the voice in the vault. The protector has returned. The blood is not pure. Forged, not born. He didn't understand all of it, but he knew the child was no ordinary heir. When their ship landed outside the palace gates, Kyle expected guards. He expected shouting. Instead, the landing pad was empty, too quiet. Lyra stepped out first, weapon ready. Kyle followed, holding the child gently. The Queen's palace still shone with gold and fire, but something in the air felt colder. At the entrance, they were met by a single figure, Lady Vestra, the Queen's high advisor. She wore long robes with sharp silver threads, and her eyes scanned them like knives. "You returned," she said simply. Kale nodded. "We found the real child." Vestra's eyes dropped to the bundle in his arms. "And what proof do you bring?" Kale lifted the glowing spear. This chose him. For the first time, Vestra blinked, just once. Then she stepped aside. "Follow me." Inside, the throne room was darker than before. The Queen sat alone. No nobles, no music, just silence. When she saw them enter, her eyes landed on the child first, and then on the spear. Kyle stepped forward and gently placed the child on the soft platform before the throne. "This is your son," he said, "but not as you remember him." The Queen stood slowly. "Explain." Kyle looked her in the eye. He was taken to Dreva's ring, hidden in an ancient vault, protected by something older than your rule. He was changed, chosen. This spear belongs to him now, not you, not me. Lyra added, "He's not just your heir, he's something more. Something the galaxy hasn't seen in a long time." The Queen walked down the steps. Her golden armor glinted in the soft light. She stood before the child and slowly knelt. Her fingers hovered just above his face. The child opened his glowing eyes and stared up at her. And then, he smiled. It was small, warm, and full of something Kale didn't expect. Peace. The Queen's lips parted slightly. Her hand lowered and gently touched the child's cheek. For a moment, everything stopped. Then Vestra spoke from behind them. "Majesty, with respect, that child is no longer pure. You said it yourself. Foreign blood runs in his veins." Kyle turned sharply. "He's your blood, and he's alive." Vestra stepped forward. "But is he loyal? Or is he now something else entirely? What did they put in him?" The Queen stood, still looking at the boy. He returned. Vestra didn't stop, and brought with him a weapon and a prophecy. "This is dangerous. He could be a threat." Kyle stepped between them. "You're afraid of what you can't control?" Vestra's voice dropped low. "You don't belong here, human." The Queen raised a hand. "Enough." The hall fell silent. She turned to Vestra. "You fear change, but change has already happened." She turned to Kyle. "You brought him home. You passed through the trial. You carried the Protector's weapon." Kale swallowed. "I was just trying to fix my mistake." The Queen smiled, barely. "And now you've given me back my son. But not just any son. A child the galaxy will fear. Or follow." Lyra whispered. "So what happens now?" The Queen looked at them both. "Now, the courts will demand answers. The nobles will question his right, and enemies will smell weakness." Kale looked down at the baby. "Then we protect him." The Queen nodded. "Yes, but not alone." She stepped back and pointed to the glowing spear. "Only one who holds that can speak for him in war, and only one who stood in the vault can carry his truth." Kyle blinked. "What are you saying?" The Queen's eyes burned like twin suns. "I name you Guardian of the Air." The words hung in the air like thunder. Kale stood frozen. His hand tightened around the glowing spear. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "Guardian of the Air." The Queen's voice still echoed in his ears. He looked at Lyra. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said what he was thinking. This was no reward. This was a war coming. Lady Vestra stepped forward sharply. Majesty, with respect, he is human, a wanderer, a nobody. How can you place the future of our throne in his hands? The queen didn't even turn to look at her. Because no one else did what he did. No one else followed the bloodline into the dark. No one else returned with the truth. Vestra's lips pressed thin. He is not of our people. Kyle finally found his voice. You're right, I'm not. I don't want power. I didn't come here to rule or command armies. The queen faced him fully. But you came back. Kyle looked down at the child who had now reached toward the spear again, fingers glowing faintly. He trusts me. Then others will too, the queen said. She turned to her guards. Summon the circle, tonight. Within hours, the throne hall transformed. Great flags of the Zir houses hung from the walls. Hundreds of nobles, commanders, and ministers filled the chamber, their eyes cold and sharp. Some whispered, some laughed quietly. All stared at Kale. He stood beside the queen, wearing armor that didn't belong to him. Silver plates with the mark of the protector across the chest. The spear rested in his hand like it had always been there. Lyra stood on his other side, silent as a shadow. The queen spoke loud and clear. Our heir has returned, not untouched, but protected. And this human, this Kale, returned him not just alive, but awakened. Gasps spread through the chamber. Vestra stepped into the middle. Then let us test him. The room grew still. She held out a small blade, curved and black. This is the blade of oaths. If he is truly chosen, the blade will not cut him. If he lies, it will spill blood no one can stop. The queen nodded once. Let him be tested. Kyle stepped forward, the weight of the spear in one hand, the blade offered in the other. He looked at the queen, then at Lyra. She gave a small nod. He reached out and gripped the blade. Silence. He pressed the edge against his palm. Nothing. The blade turned dull, then faded completely, turning to dust in his hand. The crowd gasped. Vestra stumbled back. Impossible. The queen stepped forward. The protector has accepted him. One noble knelt, then another, then a dozen more, but not all. A new voice rose, cold, sharp, male. Not all kneel for tricks. A tall Zir warrior stepped through the crowd, armor gleaming black and red. His cloak dragged across the floor. His eyes burned with challenge. I am Lord Rathan of the Burning Line. I do not accept a human to guard our throne. Kale didn't flinch. Then you'll have to remove me. Rathan drew his weapon. Gladly. The queen raised a hand. This is not the place. But Rathan ignored her. Kale looked at the spear. It hummed. It was ready. And so was he. Rathan pointed his blade. Meet me in the trial pit, at dawn. Then he turned and walked away. Kale exhaled slowly. Lyra stepped beside him. That didn't take long. No, Kale said, but I think it's just the beginning. The queen looked down at the child still watching from his floating cradle. The throne is no longer safe, she whispered. The trial pit was deep beneath the palace, a wide circular arena carved from black stone, with glowing red lines cut into the floor like scars. The crowd filled the balconies above, nobles and soldiers all gathered to watch. No one spoke. This was not entertainment. This was blood and judgment. Kale stood at the center, the protector's spear in his hand, armor tight against his chest. His fingers were steady, but his heart thumped like thunder in his ears. Lyra stood at the edge of the pit, watching silently. She had offered to fight in his place, but Kale had refused. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about proving the child's future was safe with him. Across from him, Lord Rathan dropped from the balcony, landing in a low crouch. His black and red armor shimmered with energy. In his hand, he held a massive blade that hissed with heat. Rathan's voice was calm. You don't belong here, human. You were a mistake, Kale didn't answer. He just raised the spear. The queen watched from above, her face unreadable. The child floated beside her in a protective shell of glowing light. His eyes never left Kale. The bell sounded. Rathan charged first, fast for someone in such heavy armor. His blade came down hard, but Kale twisted, dodging to the side. The spear moved on its own, almost guiding him. He struck once, twice, and the spear's glow flared with each hit. Rathan growled. Tricks won't save you. He spun, slashing wide. Kale ducked, rolled, then jabbed forward. The spear struck Rathan's chest plate and sent a wave of light rippling across the pit. The crowd gasped. Even the queen stood taller. Rathan stumbled back, armor smoking. What is this weapon? Kale said nothing. He didn't know the full truth. But he knew it responded to purpose, and his purpose was to protect the child. Rathan roared and charged again, blade swinging wild. Kale took a hit to the shoulder, armor cracking, but kept his grip. He turned, blocked, and struck again. The runes on the spear lit up. A voice echoed faintly in Kyle's mind. Do not fight to win. Fight to guard. He stepped back. Let Rathan come to him. Deflected, moved with calm, then, when the moment came, he turned the spear, hooked Rathan's blade, and slammed the blunt end into the warrior's chest with a force that shattered air. Rathan flew back across the pit and landed hard. His blade skidded away. The crowd fell silent. Kyle didn't move. He didn't strike again. He waited. Rathan groaned, trying to rise, but his armor flickered. His breath rasped. Still, Kale didn't finish it. He lowered the spear. The queen stood. He spares the fallen. Vestra stepped forward beside her. He proves mercy and strength. One by one, nobles around the arena rose to their feet. They placed their hands over their hearts. Kyle looked up. The child still watched him, eyes glowing softly. Rathan coughed once, then managed a bitter smile. You fight like a protector, not like a warrior. Kale offered him a hand. That's enough for me. Rathan took it. Above them, the queen raised her voice. Let it be known the guardian stands. The heir is watched, and the throne will not fall, the crowd shouted in one voice, a wave of approval. But as the cheers rang out, Lyra moved to Kyle's side and whispered, That wasn't the real threat. Kyle frowned. What do you mean? She nodded toward the distant sky through the glass above. Something is coming, not from the nobles, not from this world. Kale looked up. Past the sky, something waited in the stars. Kyle stood on the palace tower that night looking at the stars. The city below shimmered with golden lights, but his thoughts were far beyond it. He held the spear gently in his hand. It no longer pulsed with fire. It was quiet now, as if waiting. Lyra joined him. They're gathering on the edge of the system. Kyle turned. Who? She looked serious. The Shadra. Kyle had heard that name before. Ancient warlords. Not part of the Zir Dominion. Not part of any empire. They were older, lost to history, but still whispered about in places where people feared silence more than death. What do they want? He asked. Lyra pointed at the floating cradle behind them. The child still sleeping, they want him, or what he'll become. Kale looked down at the boy. His small fingers glowed softly even in sleep. Why? Lyra folded her arms. Because he carries something ancient. The vault didn't just protect him, it changed him. Whatever power chose him, the Shadra want to destroy it before it rises again. Kale shook his head. Then we leave. We take him somewhere safe. Lyra didn't move. There is no safe place now. Not while he lives. A loud voice echoed from below. They turned. In the Queen's war hall, nobles argued. The Queen stood in the center, listening, silent. Vestra slammed her hand on the table. The enemy will not wait. We must send the child away, off-world. Hide him. Another noble shouted, We should surrender him. Give them what they want. Protect the rest of us. Kale stepped into the hall. You'd give a child to monsters? All eyes turned. The Queen raised her hand and the room silenced. Kyle stood beside the child's floating cradle. You don't understand what he means. He's not just a boy. He's a symbol of something older than the throne. Older than all of us, a general spoke. Symbols don't stop plasma fire. Armies do. Lyra stepped forward. Then we fight, together, or we fall. The Queen finally spoke. Her voice calm and cold. The Shadra will arrive in 2 days. Our scouts confirm it. 50 warships, and worse among them, the nobles went pale. Vestra whispered, "We can't win that." The queen looked to Kale. "You said he was chosen, that the spear accepts you. Then now is the time." Kale gripped the weapon. "What do you want me to do?" The queen pointed toward the great window, toward the stars. "Show them he is protected. Show them this world is not afraid." That night Kale stood before the city. The queen gave the order, and the shield above the capital opened. A signal was sent. One single message: we do not surrender. We stand with the Heir. The next day the sky darkened. 50 ships arrived above the world, black as shadow, their engines burning blue. And in the center of their fleet, a great vessel shaped like a fang. From its center a voice spoke across the stars. "Return the child, or burn with him." Kale stepped forward to the communication platform. He looked up at the enemy's image, a tall, pale creature with 6 glowing eyes. Kale raised the spear. "He is not yours, and neither are we." The signal cut. Lyra came beside him. "You just challenged the Shadra." Kale smiled. "Good." The queen's guards moved into position. The child slept on, untouched by fear. The final battle was coming, and Kale knew. The spear would awaken again. The sky turned red as the first blast from the Shadra fleet struck the upper shields. Energy crackled across the atmosphere like lightning in a storm. The capital shook. Buildings trembled. Sirens screamed, but the palace stood firm. Inside, Kale moved through the war corridor in full armor, the spear glowing brighter with every strike above. It didn't hum anymore, it sang. The runes burned with light, and Kale could feel them moving under his fingers, shifting with purpose. Lyra ran beside him. "The outer gates won't hold. We need to move the child underground." Kale shook his head. "No, that's what they expect. They want us to hide him," she frowned. "So what do we do?" He stopped at the main gate and turned to face her. "We make him visible." Outside the palace, smoke rose from the outer city walls. The first wave of Shadra soldiers had landed, tall, armored creatures with skeletal faces and clawed limbs. They moved like machines, cutting through the Zir defenders with cruel precision. But Kale didn't run from them. He stepped onto the main steps of the palace, holding the spear in one hand and the glowing cradle in the other. The child slept peacefully inside, untouched by the chaos around him. The Shadra saw him, and they stopped. Their leader, cloaked in black metal and covered in bone markings, stepped forward. His voice was a growl. "That child carries the fire of the ancients. Return him, and we leave your world in ashes instead of dust." Kyle stood tall. "You'll take nothing from this place." The leader raised a hand. 100 Shadra aimed their weapons. Lyra shouted from behind Kyle, "Get down!" But Kale didn't move. He held the spear high. In that moment, the child opened his eyes, and the sky cracked. A wave of light exploded outward from the cradle, pure golden energy that swept over the battlefield. The Shadra soldiers were thrown back like leaves in a storm. Their weapons shattered. Their armor burned. The leader screamed, but even his voice was drowned in the sound of something ancient. Something awakening. Above them, the queen looked down in shock. The nobles watched, frozen. The spear in Kale's hand lifted into the air, glowing with power. He heard the voice again. "The protector stands. The air awakens. The cycle turns." Kale's feet left the ground. The energy surrounded him, flowing from the child through him and into the weapon. His armor glowed. His wounds healed. His voice grew louder without him speaking. "Leave this world, or fall here." The Shadra leader growled, rising to his feet. "You don't know what he is. That power will destroy you all." Kale's voice boomed. "Then let it try." More ships broke through the clouds. The Queen's hidden fleet, long kept secret, now revealed. Giant Zir warships pulsing with ancient weapons long buried beneath the city. The Queen stepped into the command tower. Fire. The sky turned white, Shadra ships exploded. Energy spears tore through the black fleet. Flames and metal rained from orbit. Kale landed softly on the steps, the child still calm, watching with glowing eyes. Lyra stood beside him. "I think he's not just the heir." Kale looked at her. "He's the reason everything is changing." Above them, one ship remained. The largest. The core ship of the Shadra, its lights pulsed, and from its belly, something massive began to descend. Not a warrior, not a ship, but something that had not walked the stars for 1,000 years. Kale held the spear tightly. Lyra whispered, "What is that?" Kale's voice was low. the true enemy. The sky split open. From the last Shadra ship descended a creature taller than the palace towers. Its body was made of black stone and silver bones. Long limbs stretched out like jagged spears, and its chest held a burning red core. Around its head spun a ring of light, pulsing like a heartbeat. It didn't speak. It didn't roar. It simply stepped forward, one foot, then another, and the ground shook with every movement. The stars above it dimmed. Even the wind fled its path. Kyle stood at the foot of the palace, spear glowing, the child cradled in his arms. Lyra stepped up beside him. What is that? Kale didn't blink. The Devourer. The one who hunts chosen blood. The queen's voice echoed from the palace walls. It hasn't walked the stars in over 1,000 years. Kyle stared at the creature as it neared. Then it's time someone made it fall. He handed the child to Lyra. Keep him safe. She grabbed his arm. You can't face that alone. I'm not alone. The child reached out from Lyra's arms, touching Kale's chest with glowing fingers. The spear flashed and Kale changed. Light spread across his body, forming new armor made of gold and silver energy. The runes on the spear expanded and covered his arms, legs, and chest. His eyes glowed the same way the child's did. Bright, calm, unstoppable. The Protector was no longer just a title. He was real now. Kyle stepped forward, the spear pulsing with each footstep. The ground cracked behind him. As the Devourer raised its claw, Kale sprinted. The battlefield trembled. The first strike landed like thunder, Kale's spear against the Devourer's arm. Sparks exploded. Kale flew back but twisted midair and landed hard. The crowd watched in silence. Not just nobles or soldiers, but civilians too. Across the city, screens showed the battle. The spear flared again. Kale charged once more. He moved faster now, guided not by training but by the will of the weapon and the bond to the child. The spear sliced through the Devourer's leg, severing wires and stone. The creature roared. For the first time it felt pain. From the sky, Zir ships fired again, blasting the Devourer with beams of energy. But nothing held it back like Kale did. The Devourer struck him once, twice. Kale bled. His armor cracked, but he rose. Again and again. And then, the spear's runes turned white. The child, watching from Lyra's arms, raised a glowing hand. A final connection formed between them. Kale closed his eyes and threw the spear. It flew straight into the Devourer's core. The sky exploded in silence. Light swallowed the beast. Its body crumbled into ash, pulled upward by an invisible wind. The fire vanished. The ship above shattered without a sound. When the light faded, Kyle was on his knees. Smoke rose from his armor. His hands were burned. He looked up slowly. The child had crawled from Lyra's arms and now stood before him, placing both tiny hands on Kyle's face. Kale smiled. The queen descended the stairs. The Devourer is gone, Kale whispered, not because of me. Because of him, the queen nodded. And because of you. Nobles bowed. Soldiers fell to one knee. Even Vestra lowered her head. Lyra looked up at the sky. It's over. Kale stood slowly, the child in his arms once again. No, he said with a tired smile. It's just beginning. From that day on, legends were told not just of a queen or her lost heir, but of a human who walked through fire, who was rejected, tested, and chosen, not by blood, but by purpose. The Protector who guarded the future and held the galaxy back. With one glowing spear,